that with just that strike, he would eliminate the beast to earn the 500 points. He was on top of its head, trying to defeat it with his sword, thinking it was already a success. But it decided to retaliate, and sent him flying so far that he crashed into the wall of another building. From there, he shouted that the 500 points were his. The chaos was so great that it was hard to tell whether he had defeated the beast or not. From the top of that building, Yi Tian watched to see if the beast had been taken down. He felt sad because he thought he had arrived too late. Still, he didn't take his eyes off the chaos happening below, not even for a moment. Mo Xiaobei, after being thrown away, was rushing back to the location where the beast was, and everyone was already congratulating him for having earned the 500 points. He was smiling happily, thinking he had achieved first place in the challenge. Because the fake wild beast was lying on the ground, the victory would easily be his. But that was not how it happened. The beast simply rose up again with an unyielding force. That giant snake seemed much fiercer now than before. They shouted to the young master that the beast was still alive and fighting, and now it was bloodthirsty, wanting to take revenge on all who had tried to take it down. That was not a furious fake beast, it was a true ferocious beast, and they were asking if they were still going after it. The leader said of course they would, as now it was worth 1,000 points, and everyone's eyes widened because they hadn't imagined how much that beast was worth. He told them that they would be giving an advantage to someone else if they didn't hurry, and everyone took off running after the beast. It had become very weak from their attacks. They couldn't let anyone encounter it now. Otherwise, all of his points would have been in vain, and since the beast had gone far away, they had to search for it again. From the top of that building, he didn't think it was a ferocious beast worth 1,000 points. He even felt a little for them, but they weren't as fast as Yi Tian was. So he would use the speed talent to run as fast as he could. He prepared himself, gathered his energy, and activated it. Now nothing and no one would reach that wild beast before him. He was covering a long path at insane speed, looking everywhere to find traces of it. Since he hadn't spotted it yet, he decided to go down and look below for any sign that could help him track it faster. He thought the people from the first academy wouldn't be there anymore. The mucus secreted by the striped snake was hiding there. Now he knew where it was and was facing that location. It seemed then that the 1,000 points would have a new recipient. He was finding the smell of the snake torturous. It should be somewhere around there, and by the odor, it wasn't far away. Looking up, he noticed its shadow and realized it was truly colossal. He also noticed that it was drinking something. He just didn't know exactly what it was. He thought it couldn't be ordinary water, but he needed the 1,000 points and the elements it might have. He would leave his worries for later after securing the 1,000 points, energized his sword, and was ready to attack. He quickly shot up to reach it and deliver a blow, but it was much faster than him, sending him far away and making his sword go elsewhere. He performed several somersaults in the air until he managed to stabilize himself, drew his bow and some arrows to try to hit it in some way. He infused energy into the arrows and shot several at once, managing to hit both of the beast's eyes. Quickly, he threw his bow and arrows to the ground, grabbed the sword still spinning in the air, and launched himself again at the beast. It was furious, but he was close to one of its arms and managed to pierce it. It screamed and thrashed, ready to catch him, but he didn't hesitate and continued trying to pierce. He ran again toward it, seeing if he could strike from a different angle. He was managing to hit it with his blade, and now he wanted to land before it fell completely to the ground. He thought that the monsters were truly strong. There was no way he could have taken it down without Mo Xiaobei's group. In any case, he wanted to know what that liquid was that it had been drinking before. But it didn't matter if the monster was after it. It must be some kind of treasure. He bottled it up and stored it with his other belongings. He decided to take its eyes to prove that he had taken it down. The blood and heart were also extremely valuable. He had also taken the fangs because they could be worth something. There were actually quite a few items he could collect, and he bottled everything he could, even though he had no idea what any of it was. But it didn't matter. He couldn't let Mo Xiaobei win against him. So with his blade, he cut a piece from the source from which the liquid that the great beast was drinking had come. The points he had earned so far should be more than enough to place him in first place. He was organizing everything in his huge bag, and it was time to get out of there. Then the group that had been fighting the beast earlier arrived, realizing that the eyes, heart, and almost all the blood had been taken. The only thing that was left was the corpse, and they wanted to know what they were going to do now, asking the young master about it. He was so furious to find out who had done it. He wanted to know who dared to steal the 1,000 points that belonged to him, and would destroy whoever it was. It had started to rain, and he was hiding hiding, thinking that they had finally arrived there. They were asking the young master if the person who stole his points had probably hidden away. One of them asked the master what they should do now. He instructed them to investigate everyone. They had to find that thief. No way was he going to let them escape easily from this. Yi Tian was realizing that the situation was not easy, so he decided to hide for a while. Using his speed, he got away as quickly as he could before he was caught or seen. He knew they would discover it eventually, but when that would happen would be when he had to turn in the parts he collected for the points calculation at the end of the test. So he had to use the remaining time to focus on cultivation and quickly improve his strength. He looked around and found a place that seemed good for hiding. He wondered how much stronger he could get by drinking that monster's blood, so he decided to drink it to see how it would be and how much stronger he could become. He thought it was probably the most disgusting thing he had ever tasted in his life, but it was fine. It was a small price to pay to get stronger and protect his sister, so he drank as much as he could to become strong in a short time. Meanwhile, his sister sneezed and thought someone was talking about her. She also wondered if her brother was okay, and he was in the test, hiding and cultivating. He realized he was increasing the speed of his cultivation by almost 4 times. It was no surprise that Chendong and the others were getting stronger. It seemed that, besides their own talents, external substances were also necessary. He would have to cultivate as best as he could in the 2.5 days he had left. 3 days had passed, and the competitors were gathered to show their trophies and tally points. They were counting the points, and the girl doing the counting was announcing names and how many points people had. At that moment, the young man arrived wanting his points calculated, which totaled 195 points for Li Yinxing. Their peers found it very good, saying he was perfect. However, his rival arrived, saying it was only 195 points, surprised by just that. He told him that he had really underestimated him, and asked if he thought he was qualified to challenge him with his 200 points. Then Mo Xiaobei asked to sum up his points too, and the girl who was counting looked impressed as he had scored 427. Their friends were amazed, thinking 227 was expected from a guy like Mo Xiaobei. But Li Yinxing's friends thought the difference wasn't that much, it was just 30 points. So they told him he was a bastard and that he had stolen points from others. He said that if he had done that, he would have used his own skills and saw no problem. He was now receiving congratulations for getting 427 points. Definitely, everyone thought that first place belonged to him. But he thought that first place should be above 1,000 points, and everyone wondered how that could be possible. All the students who were alive should have already shown up, so he was walking among that competition. It was significant that Mo Xiaobei would take first place in the test, but they noticed someone approaching from afar to sum up their points as well. The teacher, already losing patience, asked who the last competitor was, and Yi Tian walked calmly to have his points counted. He placed the items he managed to obtain from the monsters and beasts. The girl counting looked at him differently and asked if those were the eyes of a monster. Yi Tian said that was exactly it, and asked her what his total points were. She said he had 1163 points, and congratulated him for obtaining first place in that year's practical test. Another girl came to deliver his rewards, which were 3 bottles of monster blood and a sum of money. His friend was happy and proud, saying he had done a good job. However, there were already people eyeing him, wanting to know how he got so many points. Someone had finally found the thief. He had shown up, and they thought he was one of the delinquents from the 5th Academy. He asked his goons to investigate and find out everything they could about that kid. His friend said he had indeed shown them that the 5th Academy would finally take first place. Then his friend asked if he wasn't happy with Yi Tian since he had brought glory to the 5th Academy. The teacher knew he had offended and enraged a powerful family like the Mo's, and was fearing for his colleague's life. After the teacher's words, his colleague was also fearing for his own life. They asked the top 3 to look at the camera since they were going to take a good picture. But the 3 who were really happy were the first place and the champion. Congratulations were being given to the top 3 participants who had received awards. Mo Xiaobei told the winner that he had the courage to use and steal something that belonged to him. Then he looked back at the guy without showing fear and told him he could say the same. Then the third place was teasing the second, saying he had indeed forgotten what he had said earlier. Mo Xiaobei asked him what he had said, and the third place refreshed his memory, saying that he had stolen points with his own ability, so there were no problems either. The third third place wanted to know who was stronger between the first place and himself. Yi Tian said that his young master had the time for that and would be happy to fulfill his request. He knew that when he became the target of someone like that, there would be no way to escape. The only way out would be to become stronger, so he would use the challenge. Returning to the city, he was happy because he had arrived home and was calling for his sister Yi Yu. She was delighted to see him and ran to hug him. She asked him why he had taken so long. Then she started walking around him to check if he was really unhurt. She just wanted to take a good look. He, very happy, said he had brought her some gifts. He placed on the table the money he had earned, the bottles of liquid, and a book. She told him that she finally had enough money to get married. He thought she was saying absurd things, that money was for her tuition and life courses. Then, picking up one of those bottles that he had already filled with the beast's liquid, she asked what it was. He said he didn't know and then showed her the treasure book. His sister also wanted to see the treasure book. Looking through it, she was searching for something and suddenly found what the beast was drinking. It was an earth core elixir. That previous snake must have been able to become a monster using the earth core elixir. He never imagined that something he collected so easily would be such a powerful item. His sister held the bottle in her hand, showing that it was indeed that. His brother told her that this thing could improve talents, so it could definitely help her. Since he didn't need it anymore, he was already strong. Moreover, he would become even stronger, so he asked his sister to drink it. But she didn't look like she wanted to drink that strange liquid. She didn't seem to want to drink that liquid and told him that she hadn't awakened yet, and it would be a waste if she drank it. He looked at her talents and realized that her cultivation was weak, but despite that, she had a medium talent. Her talent was in the second class. If she drank the earth core elixir, it would definitely improve, but they didn't know how much. She tried not to drink, saying she could sell it for a lot of money since it was such a precious item. The book mentioned something even more powerful called the Earth Stone, where the earth core elixir originated, but since he destroyed the place, she couldn't sell it since there was no way to prove it. Pointing at him, she said that it would only lead to murder. Still holding the elixir, she lamented that it was a shame he destroyed everything. He took the bottle from her and said that if she didn't drink it, it would be an even bigger shame. Then he pretended to throw the bottle on the ground while she gasped and opened her mouth, and he poured the contents of the bottle in. She screamed for help, saying that it was homicide. After he made her drink, he asked her what it tasted like, but she was still coughing because the taste wasn't good. But when she saw her powers reacting, she thought it was very good. Then he wanted to assess what had happened to her powers because her cultivation talent was still in the second class in the book, which was wrong. She told him that she was very tired and would cook for him as soon as she woke up. He told her it was fine and to go ahead and rest a bit. He found it strange that nothing had happened, so he thought it best to wait a bit to see if the elixir would start to take effect. However, an hour later, the girl began cultivating in her sleep, and he noticed a very strong wave of talent. The reactions from the elixir she took while sleeping made him decide to look at her status bar, and her talent was medium, but her ice ability. He was pleased because her talent was now medium, which meant she had risen 2 levels, a continuation of medium talent but a rare talent of ice. Yi Yu would definitely become a high-level warrior in the future, so he thought he was getting prepared for Mo Xiaobei. He felt ready and wouldn't lose to him. He was also drinking more beast blood to become even more powerful. He thought the taste of that was even worse. He wanted to eat that when he was in the cave, but he could finally eat now. He wondered how much stronger he could become with the blood of a mid-level furious beast, so he would try that with physical training. He was very pleased because it was 8 times better. The effects of the blood of a mid-level furious beast were terrible. If he had enough blood, he thought it was a shame, but he only had 2 more bottles and was already thinking about what he should do. 10 days later, at the 5th Academy of the Forest, he was sitting meditating to increase his cultivation. Suddenly, his friend arrived running and shouting his name. Yi Tian asked him why all the fuss. He said it was about Mo Xiaobei and that he was here, so he got up and began to look around. A friend explained that he had retreated to reach the warrior level, saying that he was definitely nurturing malicious intentions and would certainly come after him for revenge. Yi Tian calmed down when he realized that Mo Xiaobei was not behind him to challenge him, but had taken a leave. He was calm since he had taken a look at Mo Xiaobei's talent, and he also had a medium talent, with a friend trying to say that if his enemy became a warrior, he would step on his friend like an ant. He also said he was a disciple with a great background with many resources, but he was just one of those guys with 3 bottles of beast blood. Yi Tian didn't have that anymore since he had already run out, so he said since he was a good person, he would take care of him and his sister too. He was thinking he only had the result of the striped snake blood in the heart. When he used that, he thought he would reach the higher level than apprentice. It could be a step away from becoming a warrior, but it was possible to achieve it. With the speed talent and the knife talent, he would definitely be able to fight against a warrior. Meanwhile, the family showed from outside a very beautiful castle, and someone arriving and breaking the door of the place, congratulating someone for reaching the warrior level. Everyone there wanted him to wait as a warrior, and now he was truly monstrous. Still at the Love Residence, which looked like a giant, well-structured castle, his servant was happy and proud that he had managed to reach the warrior level. Meanwhile, his maids were adjusting and fitting his clothes to look good on his body. He found it strange that his father was there. He said it seemed that he had finally managed to become a warrior. He really was his son. And Mo Xiaobei's father was the foundation of the family's wealth, one of the 10 elders of the Elder Association at the medium elite warrior level. He placed his hand on his son's arm and said that the son hadn't done badly at all. Then the son told him not to worry, he would never embarrass the family. The father said he knew what the elder had said, even to reward him personally, and he said it was all thanks to him and the help of the elders. He asked the butler to check if his dishes had been prepared in the kitchen after that, as he said he would go himself. The father told the son to remember to eat later, as he had prepared the favorite foods to celebrate. And Mo Xiaobei remained silent, waiting for his father to leave. As soon as he departed, he asked his guard if he had taken care of the thing he left with him before isolating himself. His guard, Costas, said yes, that the brat had no peace and nobody to count on could play with him as much as he wanted. He even thought he had someone powerful supporting him. If that was the case, then he only needed to find someone to exterminate. Someone came and said that the base was different from the jungle. If they killed as they wished, it didn't matter how powerful the family was, there would still be problems. And who allowed the use of the family name to kill? He ordered them to look for a shadow killer, an assassin of the shadows, who could know. And he continued drinking beast's blood as if it were an afternoon juice. But to hire a shadow assassin, they needed at least $1 million, all for a poor kid who didn't even know if it would be worth it. Then the young man said that a servant was just a servant, and they thought with a poor mentality. He told his guard that the base was so vast, yet only a few families managed to prosper while others became slaves, and he asked if he knew why that was. He explained that it was because they discovered a genius among the poor. They would soon kill that immediately. So the 5th Academy did not exist to cultivate talents but to eliminate them. His servant was quite surprised and disappointed to hear that, and the rich young man continued saying that conquering the weak was how the world worked. At the 5th Academy, in the grove, there he was again training his physical skills, jumping up with his sword and cutting down various trees. He seemed to be noting a difference in his attacks. They appeared more precise. But now he was worried because it seemed like it was going to rain just as he was about to return home. There was the boy heading home alone, passing through one of those suspicious alleys. It seemed to be a shortcut to get home faster since it was raining, and he didn't want to get wet for too long. But looking up, he noticed the status window and was intrigued by what that could be. He thought a lot until he managed to visualize the status window, saw that it was human, and that he had a second-class talent, which was a beginner shadow talent. He could also see when the person behind the status window charged at him to try to deal damage. Everything happened very quickly, but thanks to Jade and now his speed ability, he was able to block that attack. And the two began to fight, but he was not just any person. He had already accumulated talents and was cultivating to become stronger. He asked who was there because he knew he was not alone. Someone was coming for his life. And now the man revealed himself, no longer hiding. He was an assassin and had come to reap his life. Under the rain, he asked who was there, and the two began that fierce fight. The one who answered said he was there to take his life. The young man asked if he was an assassin hired by Mo Xiaobei, but he found it strange because he had already become a warrior. He could easily go and fight him himself, so why was he choosing the method of honest names? But the guy didn't want much conversation. He just wanted to do his job as best as he could and get out of there quickly. And the clash continued. The boy was not that weak. He blocked, dodged, and sometimes even countered, while his opponent appeared and disappeared. It seemed that his talent was of the shadows, a type of power that remained invisible. Even so, he was dueling with that somewhat invisible guy. When things got tough, he would become invisible, and when it was good for him, he was visible. The invisible guy wanted to know how a boy could be so fast. Yi Tian said it was now his turn to attack and charged at that guy with everything he had. The fight was for his life, so he couldn't hold back. But whenever the situation became complicated, the guy would become invisible. The young man concluded that talent would be very difficult for an ordinary person to deal with, but against him, it was completely useless. Using his incredible speed, he was able to keep up with the movements of the invisible guy, and since it was raining, it wasn't hard to hit him. He found it impossible. Even an elite warrior wouldn't be able to see through his talent. He asked the young man how he managed to do it. Then he asked him to first answer who had sent him there after him. The assassin, grabbing his sword again, said he would tell when he succeeded on his last breath, and he tried to find him again, thinking this time would be better and easier. But the young man's speed skills were incredible, and he managed to catch the boy who kept becoming invisible. And he said he would ask once more who had sent him there. He said he was an apprentice in the sky, stronger than he had encountered, and angrily said he would tell. He said it was Mo Xiaobei, and after saying that, he fell to the ground under that rain. Yi Tian was already getting tired of that guy chasing him. It didn't even make sense. So taking advantage of the assassin lying on the ground under the rain, he decided he wanted to keep his talent too. And he began to extract a copy of the talent. The copy of the shadow talent was successfully completed. And now he had one more talent to be able to combat whoever tried to catch him. His extract window referred to him as human, and the cultivation talent ranked as medium, ramp speed novice talent, and blade ranked as medium, task of shadows ranked novice. His talent in the shadows was his. Now he was becoming stronger and stronger. Under all that rain, he was now taking care of the assassin's body. He had made a sort of hole to put him in and even covered it with some stones. But he had to do it right in case no one discovered it one day. He thought that humans should not be like fallen leaves, left to move in the wind and rain, and he promised himself that he would have a life. The way a man should live in a world like that would be like the wind and the rain, never like a fallen leaf. With every talent he copied, he felt more confident that everything would turn out well. On his way home, he took a shower to clean himself from everything in some way. After showering, he put on a t-shirt and took a look at how his new situation was now after acquiring so many talents. Everything was perfect. He sat on his couch and said it was good. He looked at the table and saw that all of those were gifts from Li Xian. The two swords were probably primordial weapons. One sword was completely ruined, but these were practically intact. A white gold card with 100 added up to a total of 3.5 million. Satisfied, he stored what he had earned in his wallet, thanking Mo Xiaobei for the gifts and the money he had sent through that assassin. There was also a book titled Blade of Shadows, which was a bronze level knife technique, a tier for blades, including iron, bronze, silver, and gold. It was good. The blade techniques could block the full power of someone else's blade talent, which was exactly what he needed. He would learn and test himself, so he started reading chapter 1 in his room. It was raining heavily, and he thought about something. His sister still hadn't returned home. Since Xiaobei had sent someone to assassinate him, he might already know everything about him. So, he was eager to look for his sister, which meant she could be in danger. He didn't even want to think that there was a chance his sister could be killed. So, he jumped out of the window and took off with speed, wishing for his sister's safety. In the city center, at an ordinary high school, he descended from the skies to look for his sister. He quickly began searching, shouting her name and asking where she was. This was just an ordinary school. People with talents couldn't just go in there and kill students. But someone like Mo Xiaobei wouldn't follow or accept the basic rules of social warriors. Then someone pressed something against his stomach, and told him not to move. Immediately, he jumped up, ready to attack that person. Before attacking, he decided to remove the person's hood to see who it was, asking them not to move. It was just his sister with an umbrella that she had used to poke his stomach. He asked her what she was doing and why she took so long, as she had warned him that the cleanup shift that day was cleaning all the classrooms. She asked why he hadn't taken an umbrella with him or put on shoes since he was all wet. He said he had forgotten because he had left in a hurry. She wanted to know how he had made that cool move. But he was right, both he and his sister were being watched, and Mo Xiaobei himself was keeping an eye on them. And he wanted to know why that guy was still alive, and he didn't seem satisfied at all. On their way back home, they stopped at a snack bar and bought a treat to eat. The two returned home peacefully under the same umbrella, enjoying their snacks. The sister asked if he would like to have dinner since she would be cooking that night. He replied that it could be her signature dish, slices of cooked meat. While they were satisfied and happy, they were being followed. But after accumulating so many talents, he could perfectly sense that someone was tailing them. Yu Yu was excited because she had just finished preparing their dinner and was setting the table, and the car that had been following them was still down there in the rain, watching them. The next day, at Yu Yu's school, she was in class and would be the next to solve a question. She was a good student, and now her brother was in the neighboring building, keeping watch to ensure nothing happened to her. He had been doing the same routine for 3 consecutive days, and that car was still monitoring them. He thought they had lost their trail, as they were even considering harming his sister. From above, he saw that the car was leaving again. He had to follow it. So he traveled a long way through the city behind the car to follow it. He found it strange where it had chosen to go. It was a warehouse, and he saw that Mo Xiaobei was there. Just seeing him made him furious. However, that guy was preoccupied with other matters. He was beating up someone who owed him money and couldn't pay at that moment. The man, after talking to the rich guy, swore he would pay as soon as he got the money and pleaded for him to let him go. Mo Xiaobei warned that if he left it for another day, it would be double. After all, his money didn't grow on trees. Sitting there with a nasty look, he asked if he didn't think it was right. The man who had taken a beating warned that his interest rates were too high and that he couldn't manage, but as soon as he could, he would pay. One of his lackeys informed him that someone had arrived, but with the look he shot at him, that employee was in deep trouble. He asked him if he had any news about the shadow assassin. His lackey, approaching where he was sitting, said he couldn't contact that shadow assassin and would try to reach him again through someone else. Yi Tian was now sure it was indeed Mo Xiaobei who had hired the assassin to take him down. But he was tired of sitting. He stood up and walked over to the guy who was in debt, and said that people thought rich descendants like him were easy to fool. Stepping on him, he said it wouldn't be easy to pull a fast one on him because, besides being rich, he was very strong. His employee, who couldn't deal with the assassin, said he wouldn't use him to lure him in. He had always been loyal. Another lackey noted the heartbeat of the guy who had taken some hits and told him he was low on life. Then Mo Xiaobei told his lackey to take care of Tian's sister, asking if he knew how to handle her, and ordered him to get rid of her. The lackey said he was planning to trust this to a friend who had just gotten out of jail, but things there could get difficult. At that moment, his young master approached him. However, the servant said he didn't need to worry because he would handle it. But he didn't want any mistakes, and to ensure his servant understood, he punched him in the stomach as a lesson. The man fallen at his feet asked why he had done that. The young Mo warned that it was the punishment for not doing the job right. At that moment, Tian drew his primordial weapon and prepared for a duel. When he sensed the imminent danger, he saw that Tian was there for a serious fight and seemed eager for it. So he went down straight to that guy who wanted to end his sister's life, and he finished him off. All the henchmen were worried because he was already lying there lifeless. One of them noticed that the shadow talent hiding the body was startled to see that it was no longer with Li Xiyuan. That monstrous figure with its 2 blades walked calmly toward him. Yi Tian needed to eliminate all of them and leave no trace that he had been there. But the henchman was only worried about how he had acquired the shadow talent. He told the boy that he had investigated him and found that he was nothing but a failure with a bit of talent. How could he exterminate his young master with one move? He asked where Li Xiyuan was, but the young man wasn't interested in giving explanations. He just moved his neck from side to side to relieve the tension he was feeling, and he turned his eyes back to that guy who wouldn't stop talking. He charged at him to eliminate that burden too. The guy screamed that he couldn't be exterminated. But that was exactly what he did. He found that guy who talked too much on the ground, and he threw some of Li Siyuan's belongings to shift the blame onto the Shadow Clan. Looking at all the fallen, he said that he wasn't someone who simply waited to be slaughtered like a sheep. It was a pity that they chose to mess with the wrong target. He walked away calmly as if he were just taking a stroll. Then he picked up extreme speed to go home. Hours later, at that same place, several people were arriving, and his father wanted to know who the scoundrels were that did this. Someone had executed his son, and it wouldn't go unpunished. Someone found something and handed it to the elder, and said that the culprit could probably be a shadow assassin. He thought it inhumane to hire a shadow assassin. Everyone was calling the elder Mo Zhangqing, the great elder of the wealthy Mo family from the maritime base, the only great warrior of this family. Suddenly the great elder was there. He was a warrior of elite apprentice rank and a grandmaster warrior. Elder No trembled just at the sight of the great elder. He told the great elder that his son was dead and mentioned that he was the prodigy of his family. The great elder said he already knew and asked him to stand up. Then he told the great elder that Xiao Bei had just returned from the warrior realm and had just finished his celebration banquet. But he met as miserable an end as this. The great elder recognized that for the younger generation, if the No family produced a second warrior, their position in the maritime base would increase significantly. The elder said that his son's death could not have been in vain. He asked for revenge for Xiao Bei and then handed over the evidence that the henchman had found at the scene. The great elder took it and was thinking if it was really the second shadow. Suddenly he remembered that there was a family that held a grudge against them. Holding that piece of fabric that had been left with the name Shadow, the great elder positioned himself in the sunlight and saw that there was a symbol in the middle. It was the symbol of the Iron Tooth. Now he knew who to seek for revenge. The next day at school, Yi Tian wanted to know more about the Iron Tooth base, so he asked his friend who knew more about these things. His friend said that the Iron Tooth base was much stronger than the maritime base, and that the elders of the Mo family suspected that some families in the maritime base were secretly working with the Iron Tooth base. Rumors said that Mo Xiao Bei, who had just reached the warrior level, was also killed by him. They even decapitated him. Tian remained calm because it seemed that no one suspected it was him. His friend continued saying that the first person Mo Xiao Bei would go after reaching the warrior level was definitely Yi Tian. Yi Tian had left a handkerchief with the word shadow behind on purpose to throw off the Mo family, but that elder discovered the symbol of the Iron Tooth base on the handkerchief. Had he accidentally revealed the conspiracy of the Iron Tooth base, or was it just that old man making things up? The next day, at 4:00 a.m., Yi Tian had woken up early and was on tiptoe preparing not to wake his sister. He was sneaking out when his sister noticed that her brother was leaving and asked where he was going at that hour. She wanted to know if he had woken up with her. He told her that he was going to train in nature to improve his powers. She didn't want him to go alone since he had returned a few days ago, and asked if he couldn't skip going or go with a friend. He told Yi not to worry about him and to wait for him at home. Then he set off for his training, but before he left, his sister hugged him and asked him to come back soon. He assured her that he would be back safely soon. At his training location, he was improving his movements to become more agile and fast. People said that advanced level ferocious beasts stayed there, but with his current powers, he could only hunt low-level beasts secretly. This time was his chance to reach the warrior level. It was then that he heard an earthquake as the ground shook slightly. But when he paid attention, it wasn't an earthquake, it was a ferocious beast, and it was a large one, finishing off a smaller beast. Looking at its status window, he realized it was the Iron Cow ferocious beast. Its blood was weak, and its defensive talent was second class. He thought that an Iron Cow with second class defensive talent wasn't bad. He had just been noticed by that animal, which was now charging at him. So this could be a good time. He set aside his equipment, and in the blink of an eye, charged toward that Iron Cow. He threw his sword at the animal to see if he could cause greater damage. He analyzed it a bit from above to see if he had a chance, and with a strong thirst for talent, he descended with full force onto what would be his new talent. He realized that it had strong defense. It threw him into the air with just a block around its body and a fierce roar. He was taking quite a beating, but he wouldn't give up because that talent interested him greatly. Just thinking about obtaining it made him smile. Then he charged at the beast, which also had a fierce gleam in its eyes just like him. The Iron Cow wasn't interested in losing so easily. It was definitely much stronger than he had imagined. But for someone willing to obtain that second-class defensive talent, he should know that it wouldn't be easy. So, standing still, admiring that creature with the talent he wanted, he charged at it to capture it. The beast also prepared, and he made a movement so fast to try to attack it. He thought it didn't matter what creature it was. He knew exactly where their weak points were. The cow was furious, its mouth open in his direction. He adjusted one of his swords in the air because he knew exactly what to do. Now close to it, he would attack its eyes. He positioned himself in the air to attack but couldn't pierce them, as that cow was no ordinary cow, and its eyes couldn't be pierced easily. When he insisted, his sword shattered into pieces. It was just a second-class defensive talent, and yet it was already so strong. Since the cow had also prepared for that attack and his turn had passed, it struck him with great force. It sent him crashing into some rocks a little further ahead while keeping its shield active. He lay among the stones, now realizing that it was a lot more powerful than he initially thought, and he wanted much more now. But it was a shame because the cooldown period for copying the talent was 16 days. That armored cow should be weaker than the silver moon wolf. However, it was stronger than that violent scaled snake. But its talent was great. He just needed to find a weak point to attack strongly. He thought he might have a chance to win, so he motivated the talent of shadows. He charged at it, now armed with only one of his swords, launching several powers in its direction, but the shield was strong enough to block all of them. The talent of shadows, at that moment, was so useless that he didn't even realize he was attacking. Not even the sword talent was effective against that creature. He was still searching for a weak point. Every creature had one, and that animal should too. That defensive talent had no openings, and then he noticed something strange. Its protection was weak in one spot, and it seemed he had found its weak point located at its hindquarters. So, he prepared to attack that animal's weak point. He used the dark blade, positioning himself close to the weak point, aimed, and used the shadow thrust to achieve the effect he needed. The animal screamed loudly as he had managed to hit its weak point, and it seemed his hunch was correct. He already had access to experience, and knew he